So with that in mind, then is this notion that I liked as well that I read about is moral reframing. Can you
Hmm.
just tell us about that concept? I fell in love with that.
Yeah. I also think it's such a, I think of it as a special case of psychological targeting. So if psychological
Yeah,
targeting essentially means tapping into psychology to change your behavior or your attitudes, moral reframing does that in the context of, again, your moral values. And the idea here is that if I can, for example, make a political argument in a way that speaks to your moral foundations rather than mine, it's going to be much more persuasive. And typically, right, so if I'm a liberal, most of the arguments that liberals make about immigration are liberal arguments. So it's again tapping into care and fairness, even when we're trying to convince someone who's conservative, because that's our view on the world, right? And we only have
yeah,
this one perspective, but it's like an egocentrism bias that just says, I'm going to try to explain to you how I see the world, and I'm going to try to persuade you using my own view on the world. It's much more effective if I take it and say, I'm going to try and figure out how you think about the world, right? If you're conservative, can I craft an argument about climate change that's based on purity, for example, like preserving the planet rather than saying we want to look out for generations in the future, which again is a much more liberal argument. And what we know is that it's much people are much more open and receptive to arguments even to a point that goes against their original beliefs, if it's made within their own moral foundation. So again, we're just tapping into how do you see the world, and can we use that to explain something to you or to convince you of a certain argument. So very similar to other forms of psychological targeting, just in the moral domain.